Alright, so welcome back everybody. So for this video, I'm going to show you guys how to play Peacemakers of War, at least to give you a general idea of how you play the game. I won't probably mention too much stuff on map rules and things like that, because each map's got its own unique rules and things. So, and each troops kind of have their own unique rules as well. So I'm showing you scenario 1. We have the macaws on the left, and we have the ocelots on the right. Now, in this game, the object of the game is to unmotivate these troops so that their motivation goes down to the least amount possible, basically, okay? At the end of a round, at the end of an army round, if the glass beads are in the green on both sides, you automatically win. However, if a glass bead ever goes to this little thing with the flag symbol, which is like the surrender spot, for any reason at all, you automatically lose the game, okay? So that's the thing. So while you want to get these glass beads to go down to the green spot, if they go down too far and they go here, it's game over. So it's dangerous getting them to come down here. But that's also the only way to win too. Also, you'll notice that the macaws here, their motivation is at 9. And the ocelots here, their motivation is at 7, so they're a lot closer to surrendering than the macaws are. You'll also notice that the macaws have more troops than the ocelots do. So which means they could potentially do more damage to the ocelots, which could make the ocelots way more unmotivated than the macaws would, causing them to go down further fastest. So you want to try to mitigate that as much as you can. We'll get to how you can mitigate that possibility later, but that's the general idea. So let me explain the first phase of the game. The first phase of the game is actually the adventurers, us, who are trying to stop this war from taking place, or from completely taking place and completely just causing a huge loss of life on one side or the other, or both, right? So we're going to start with resource cards. We're going to draw 4 of these resource cards, okay? And what you're going to do is you can actually look at them for the setup of the game. You can look at them and you can decide, who gets what, basically. You want to evenly give these out as best you can. So if you were playing a 3-player game and you still draw 4, but one player is only going to get 1. So that's the thing. I mean, one player is going to get 2, and the other players are only going to get 1 each. So that's kind of the idea. But you want to try to give them out evenly as possible. Now, they have a bunch of different symbols on here. And so let's take a look at this one, because it's got all 5. So when you take an action, your actions are going to be only used with these resource cards. All the actions you can possibly take are on these cards. So if you have no resource cards to use, you would have no more actions you can use for the round. So that's important to note. And when you decide to use an action, whether it's one of these symbols up here on the top of the card or this here, you'll discard the card, okay? Unless it's an ongoing effect. Some cards have ongoing effects, so they'll stick around a while. So let's explain what these actions are. The first one is called survey. So this one with this eyeball on it means survey. This one is travel. This one is fortification. And this one is delegate. And then if you're going to use the card for this text below, that's called a scheme, okay? You can only use 1 of the 5 on this card. So if I want to use the scheme, I can't do any of the other actions up top, unless I did delegate and this was given to somebody else. We'll explain that momentarily, okay? So let's explain what each of these do, okay? So for this card, it doesn't matter, because all of the eyeballs or surveys are going to be the same on every card, unless they have a plus card on them. We'll get to that later, but some of them might have a plus card on survey. So what you're going to do is, if you're going to want to use survey, your character, so if I was the lizard, the day gecko, and I had this card, the only way I could use survey would be if I was first at a location with one of the troops. So my lizard would have to be here. But you're wondering, in the beginning of the game, I'm not there, so I can't use survey at that moment, right? But I could use another card. So let's say I used this card instead of for its text, I used this card for its travel. And that would allow me to move 1 per foot on that travel. That means if I used this to travel, I could move 2 spaces, okay? So I could use this if I had it, discard it, and move my guy here, basically. And that's potentially how I could get to my opponent. I discard it, and it's gone for a while. But you'll notice it has a plus card on it. That means after I've used it for its effect and discarded it, I would get to draw another resource card. So hey, I'm getting to draw resource cards for some of these awesome things. And look, this even has a plus card here for fortification. So that's cool, right? So that's the idea of that. So assuming I was at a location with one of the troops, with the macaws here, I could use the survey to look at the top command cards. So these are the command cards. So this is the macaws command cards, and this is the ocelot command cards. Normally, you're supposed to put them at these locations, and then you have a discard pile below, but with limited space. The decks are here, and these will be the discard piles, so to speak. Okay? So I could look at the top card, at one of these top cards, with that ability that I just used, the survey ability. Okay, so but I can't look at both. I can only use the ability to look at one of them. So let's say I look at this one first. So then what you're going to do is you're just going to reveal it, placing it on top of the deck. Okay, so it'll just stay there. And this one is strike. Okay. All right, so that's the general idea. Now, why do you want to look at these cards ahead of time? Well, you want to look because you want to know what's going to happen and if there's some way you can avoid it from happening, okay? So let's say I had another card that let me survey, and it was with the day gecko, and I decided to survey this card. So now we've got swift, and so they're going to do swift and strike. So what does this mean? Well, you'll notice first the numbers, okay? So that's something to note, but then we're also looking at what this could potentially do as well. And we'll get to that momentarily, actually. But that's something you could potentially do on your turn, is you could look at these cards ahead of time, okay? That's kind of what you want to do. Now, in the beginning of the game, it's not very intuitive exactly on what cards to look at, what to avoid, how to avoid them, which of these scheme cards would work best to change the outcome, if it will, or to defend or fortify. Some of these scheme cards will allow you to fortify. Like here, for instance, fortify. Some have other abilities for defense and attacking and things like that. So let's explain fortification then. So if you decide to take this card for its fortification action, you're going to place 2 cubes down at the spot, if it's your card, assuming. If you're the day gecko and you happen to be at a spot with a troop, you're going to put 2 fortifications down on that spot. So what does this mean? What does fortifications do? Well, let's say the ocelot over here was to attack, and they attacked this troop here, and they did 3 damage to this troop, because in this particular scenario, they always do 3 damage per ocelot attacking. So what would happen is you would remove 2 of the fortifications and only cause that macaw 1 damage. And so then that macaw would receive 1 damage, and they have 5 health, and that macaw that just got attacked is the D macaw. So I could just put this here to indicate that that macaw was now damaged, and he had 1 damage on him. And now he's only got 4 health left. So what happens when one of them is defeated? What is going to happen? Well, they're going to you're going to cause their motivation to go down. So if the attack had included many other troops, it could have potentially caused that troop to die, and then when that happens, they lose 1 motivation. But something else also will happen as well, and we'll get to that momentarily. I'm getting ahead of myself here. So you could do some damage, potentially. They could do some damage to each other as you're trying to stop this war. And so that's what fortification is for. It's to help try to prevent them from dying. It's to help them from receiving damage. Now, if they do receive damage, there are some cards in here, none of these do it, but there are some cards you can get that can actually just heal the injuries of some of the troops. So that is an option. So you might want to do that if you get one of those. You can also food poison one of the troops as well. You can never cause that unit to die. So you can never cause that unit to lose one more than the amount of health that it actually has. But you could do some damage to a troop if you used this scheme card for its food poisoning effect, for instance. It's the only one in the game that can injure a troop. And why would you want to do that? Well, maybe there's too many macaws on this side and you want to even the odds a little bit so the ocelots don't get wiped out and you automatically lose, because that's one of the things here. If any one side ever loses all of its troops, then if the ocelots lose all of its troops, then it's game over. Okay? So that can happen. You want to avoid that. Also, you'll notice this one here is a little different in shape from the other macaws. This is the commander, okay? His name is Sachi Yamak, okay? If he is ever defeated, it's automatic game over, because he's the leader. If he is taken out of the picture, then it's instant surrender for the macaws, even if the other macaw troops are still alive and well. So that's another end game losing condition for sure. So that's basically what you can do on your turn. So you can do those actions. Like I said, you can scheme for its many different abilities. Whatever those scheme abilities may do, you can use them for. This one's only useful this guidance ability is only useful if you've seen some of the cards. So it's possible to know what some of these are face up ahead of time, even more than one on the same side. And so using your guidance, you could rearrange them in a more convenient way. So that gives you some ideas of what you could potentially do ahead of time. But yes, fortification is the third action. So we've talked about survey, travel, and fortification. Now this is called delegate. Now what does delegate do? Well, it's quite simple, really. If you and another player are on the same space, you can decide, I'm going to delegate this card to the other player, giving it to him. Remember, this is a game where you're potentially going to have more than one person play. Of course, you can play solo, but some of these cards might be more useful to the other player. And if the other player is on the same space of you, and you think that this card would help this player on your team, you can delegate the card to him as the action, giving it to him, for instance, just like that. But it only works if you're on the same side. I mean, on the same hex here. So if you're not on the same hex, then it won't work. That's the downside. So, one's here, then, that's how that's going to work. But there's cards that can mitigate that problem. The carrier pigeon is a card that can help mitigate the delegate ability. So those are the four main actions that you can take. And then, like I said, scheme is just getting to activate whatever this does, or whatever this does. I found this card very useful on occasions, Lost Missive. So that's something to note. That's quite a useful card at a critical moment. So not worth potentially using these when you can use its scheme and save it for later. And so, like I said, when you take your turn, when it's the adventurer phase, you are not required to use all these cards. You can save them for later, just so you know. Okay? Then, after the adventurer phase is done, the army phase begins. And so the army phase is delegated or regulated with these command cards. So then they are drawn and then placed like so. Okay? So let's explain the army phase next. Okay? So first, you're going to notice there are numbers on the sides of these cards. You're going to combine them. So this is 7.3, okay? And this is 4.2. That means its order is lowest, okay? And this order is highest because it's a higher number combined. And so that means that the macaws here, since they have the highest order, they are going to go first. and they're going to do everything that they possibly can do first, and then the ocelots will go last with whatever they possibly can do. So that's basically what that means, okay? And so you'll see here it says, and you'll always, unless a card says otherwise, you'll always do left side first, working your way down, and then finish with whatever's on the right, working your way down. Unless a card says otherwise. Sometimes the card says do the right first. That has been known to happen. Same thing with this side. That could happen on this side too, okay? So what's going to happen here for this particular army phase? Well, you'll notice it says, if this order has the highest speed value, which it does because it's the highest number, because that's lower, then what it's going to happen is it's going to cause 1 motivation. That's what this icon means, plus 1 motivation. So now they're very fast, and so they're feeling very, very motivated in this war to continue on with this war. So that's not good for us, especially with the Macaw side, because their motivation starts higher anyways. So that's not good for us, for sure. But sometimes it's unavoidable. So, but if it had been the lowest, they would have lost 1 motivation, which would have been great for us, for sure, who are trying to prevent this war. And then what's going to happen is, for this particular instance, the circle macaws are going to attack. Okay, so now let's explain circle. What does that mean? So you'll notice here that this macaw has a star shape. That means it's not a circle. This also has a star shape, this macaw. So that means it's not a circle, right? But these two here have circles on them. In the setup, it tells you which ones you're going to be playing with, depending on which scenario you are. So these macaws are the circle group, okay? So when a card says, hey, circle, this is referring to circle macaws, that means only these are going to be attacking potentially, all right? That's the idea, okay? So that's what it means. So it doesn't mean everyone attacks. It just means the circle group. There's circles, stars, and gears. On this side, it's stars and circles for this scenario. And on that side, it's 1 gear and 2 circles. So that's the difference here, okay? And there could be more troops if you're playing with other scenarios. There could be more troops than this for sure. But yeah, that's the general idea of that. So then that's what's going to happen. Now, they're always going to attack the closest troop that they can attack. They will never attack adventurers. Adventurers can never be harmed in this game whatsoever. They don't get attacked, nor can they really attack really either. They're just here. We're just here to stop the war from happening. We're neutral in this battle, okay? So then the macaws will attack the closest troop, which for these two, the closest one for both of them is actually this troop here because it's closest to both of them. And then you're going to look at this card here on the map, and you'll notice, let's see if I can zoom in better that. You'll notice this icon here has a sort of archery symbol with the number 2 on it. And you'll notice this one has like sword and bow on it. Hence, this is the power icon, and this is the health icon. So that means that these macaw soldiers, which are those, and this one too for that matter, have 5 health, have 3 power, and their range is 2. That means when they're attacking, they will never be on the same spot as their opponents at all. They can never go to the same spot as an enemy troop. So if you ever get the action to move forward, they will never move onto a spot with their enemy. Okay? Never. But their range is usually 2 or more anyway. So they don't need to be next to each other to attack. And this one is within 2, and this one is within 2 of that warrior there. Now, if there's a tie, if there were 2 enemy warriors that were of equal distance, then you'll choose the one that has the least amount of health left. So if one of the enemies has been damaged, then that one gets attacked first. That one they'll go after first, which makes sense because in wartime they usually go after the weakest one anyway, right? Also, the commander in this game has 8 health, so most likely he won't have the lowest health anyways because he's got the most health to start with regardless. So that's important to note. Also, whenever you move, some commands will cause the enemies to move. So you can move you can move troops that are of the same kind to the same spot if that's where they're supposed to go. Usually, a card will just say they move forward one space. Okay, for this scenario, that's all they'll move at any given time is just move one space forward. And if that causes this macaw to move into a spot with another macaw, then that's allowed. That's fine. They can also move into a spot that has adventurers, and likewise, adventurers can always move into spots that have troops. Because like I said, we're neutral with everybody. So that's the whole point there. So since these two macaws would both attack this troop here, they would do a combined effort of 3 to attack each. So this macaw here would do 3, and this one would do 3 for a total of 6 for one combined attack on this location here. Now, the ocelots here, so let's see if we can zoom in on them. Okay, so maybe we'll move the camera and zoom in further. Okay, so you'll notice that their range is a little different for the ocelots for this scenario. The archers have a range of 3, while the warriors have a range of 2. So they could attack pretty far away as well. Same distance, if not more. But their power is the same as the macaws, okay? And their health is also exactly the same. Which means, once again, that ocelot would perish in that battle. Because the ocelot only has 5 health, and the macaws are doing 6. Now you'll notice, you might not notice this, but I'm not going to zoom in, but there's a shield on this location here. That would protect them from 1 damage, but still it wouldn't matter, because then they would receive 5 damage, and that's how much health they have anyways. And so then this ocelot would perish, and he would go here. Now, because they lost a troop, it doesn't matter which side loses a troop, loses a unit. Because they lost a unit, this will cause that to go down 1 by 1 space, okay? So, hey, you're thinking that's a good thing. Well, not necessarily, because when you see somebody die, it scars you for life, like it should. And so when that happens, a horror card is going to be drawn. Okay, and that horror card is going to be put to the top of the resource deck, like so. These are bad things that can happen to you, okay? All right, and we'll explain the last part of the phase of the game when this comes up. But yes, you're going to draw a horror card every time a troop dies. It doesn't matter what side. So at most, for this particular scenario, 5 horror cards will be drawn. And every single horror card is a different, unique card, each doing its own horrible thing that will just haunt you for the rest of the game. Okay? So yes, we potentially could have lowered the ocelots by 1, but we're also getting horror cards too. So we don't really want that to happen, especially to these guys who have way less troops than the macaws now, especially even now. For sure, I don't mind too much if they lose a troop because they have so many, but they have so little. Their motivation will go down much faster than them, and that's not good. We want their motivation to go down equally, you know? Now, there will be ways that motivation will go up too, like the macaws, their motivation went up, and that will happen a lot too. So it's going to fluctuate, and the object of the game is to try to mitigate that as much as possible so that it's always going down. And hopefully going down to here only, to the green spot only, right? So basically, they've attacked, their turn is done, then you would take care of what the ocelots do next in the order phase. And so for this equation, we got ritual here. So you're going to roll a dice, and you may re-roll once if an adventurer is nearby. Now, what does nearby mean? Does nearby mean adjacent? It does not. Nearby will always mean that the adventurer has to be in a spot with that troop. It doesn't matter if it's these command cards when you're talking about nearby. It could also mean if you're using one of your resource cards. You have to be nearby an army to use it on the army. And so that means that they have to be in the same hex to do so. That's what nearby means in this game. So let's just say that's the case. But then what does this do? You're going to roll the dice, and then depending on the roll, the ocelot's motivation will go down or it will go up. So if it's 1 through 7, it's going to go down. And if it's 8 through 12, it's going to go up. In this case, we would want it to go up because we don't want the ocelots to lose motivation too soon. Okay? And then we have strike here for the macaws, for instance. After they dealt with that card, they would deal with this one. And the circular ocelots would attack, which would be this one here. Okay? And its range is 3. So it can reach just about any one of these easily. And then, if no macaw was defeated, -1 motivation. So, the ocelots, they want to defeat their troops, their opponents. And if they don't, their motivation it will cause them to go down that way as well. So, while we don't mind if some of these don't perish, we definitely don't want them all to perish. And if we don't cause them to die at certain times when this happens, then all the more better for us trying to stop this war from happening or escalating further. So that's kind of how that's going to function. Now, after all of the orders have been rectified and done for both sides here, then there's one final phase of the game, and that is the status phase, okay? You're going to check to see if the game is over. You're going to check to see if these glass cubes or glass beads are in the green spot, and if they are, you automatically win. But if only one is down there, then it won't matter. You have to get them both there, okay? So this little tract here, they have to both be in the green, okay? And then you're going to draw the next 4 cards for the next round of the adventurer's phase. But here's the thing. You're not drawing you're not drawing just this, and then 4 more cards. You're only allowed to draw 4 cards max. So if they were all horror cards, that's all you're drawing for the round, that means, just so you know. So yeah, you're going to draw 4 cards. So hey, we're only drawing 3 this round technically because the first one is a horror card, which we'll now have to deal with. And so it's always going to cause whoever is highest up on the card here. So that means the day gecko is going to cause an alarmed shouting, which then each nearby unit immediately attacks immediately. So if I wasn't with any of these troops, nothing would happen. Yay! But if the lizard was with that troop there, then the macaws would then attack immediately. Ignoring this, they would just attack, which is awful, bad, very bad. That's horrible. And there's a bunch of other potential horrible things that could happen to you with these horror cards. So, yeah, bad, for sure. But yeah, that's what's going to happen. And then, at some point, you're going to run out of cards, okay? Whether it's the command deck or the resource deck here. When the deck is empty, that means you have to shuffle the discard pile, including these horror cards, because after you're done using them, they go to the discard pile of the resource deck. That means they're going to be shuffled in here, and that means you're going to have to deal with them again. And if the game takes too long, and you're just not getting those beads down, and they're all surviving, and the game proceeds and proceeds and proceeds, you could be doing this again and again and again. So, that's the idea. You want to try to end the war as quickly as possible, but you don't want to be overzealous and cause the glass beads to go down too far and end the game that way either. Because the troops on both sides could still technically be alive, and the bead could still be caused to go straight down to 0, and you could still lose the game. So, plan ahead. That's kind of the idea. And obviously do what the survey means to do as much as you possibly can, but maybe not in the first couple of turns when you have very few cards. But basically, I think that's everything you need to know in order to just play a basic game of this. That should be everything you need to know. Pretty much everything else will be explained when you get the game set up and you start reading what all of these say for each of the scenarios when you play them. You're supposed to kind of find these out as you go. Technically, you're supposed to find out what these are going to do as you go too. I mean, you can look at them before the beginning of the game if you want to. It's allowed to just kind of give you a heads up of what potentially could happen, because each scenario is different. That means different things could happen for sure. But it's always more enjoyable to kind of just take this one at a time and not delve too much into some of the rules for sure. So I hope I hope that I explained this well enough for you guys to play your first game of this. And I'll see you guys again next time. Don't forget to give me a like or subscribe to my channel if you guys liked this video. And I'll see you guys again next time. Bye.